Stephen Aarstol, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's our pleasure. You are the owner and founder of Tower Paddle Boards, and we honored you as one of our top 100 social capital companies last year, and it was our pleasure to do so.
I
And we
appreciate
did
that.
so absolutely, absolutely. We're going to talk about why in a minute, but to dig into that, you were founded in 2010. You very quickly caught the eye of Mark Cuban on Shark Tank and went on Shark Tank, and he invested, and the company just exploded. After that, but he has talked on and on and on about how it's one of the best investments he ever made. Uh, Beyond it being tower paddle boards and you making paddle boards, why don't you tell our readers and listeners and viewers a little bit more about what makes your company different and why you think you caught Mark Cuban's attention?
Yeah, I think our company in general is, in all the companies I've done, I look at it from kind of a contrarian approach. Like, what problem can we fix out there? And with the paddle boards, I basically went to go buy a paddle board in 2010, and they were extraordinarily expensive. And I live here in San Diego, and why should a paddle board be $1,200 to $1,600 when it's essentially a large surfboard? And I can walk down the street and buy a surfboard for $300 to $500. And I'm like, that's a problem. What's going on there? And I was in the internet space already with, I sold poker chips direct to consumers online. And so I thought, well, why can't I do that for paddleboards too? And when I started looking into it, I could sell paddleboards for half price to consumers direct online over the internet, right? And that's what we did basically. And we leveraged. We didn't spend a dime on advertising the first 4 years of the company, and we grew 2,800%. And how did we do that? We basically had a really good product, and then we let people know about it by, search engine optimization, just creating a library of content on the web that people could find out about paddleboards, and they'd see, oh, these guys sell a paddleboard, they're half price. And that's really how Shark Tank found out about us. They called us out of the blue one day and said, hey, we want to have a paddleboard company on there. We found what you guys are doing. It sounds interesting. Went on there, and I had never even heard of the show. And 5 weeks later, I'm pitching, and Mark Cuban was one of the guest sharks on that show, and he ended up investing.
So you really zero in on something that's so basic and so important to what we talk about, and yet it's forgotten a lot. You know, One of the things we talk about in social capital is that capitalism's a good thing, and it works because it's supposed to actually provide a valuable service or a valuable product, at a fair price. And when that kind of thing happens, people come back and they want to buy more and so on and so forth. And it seems so simple to do that kind of thing. Let's create a product and sell it at a fair price. But somehow a lot of people forget to do that nowadays. We come up with all these other ways of trying to maximize profits way beyond that. And maybe you can make money for a little bit, but eventually it's going to catch up with you. So I love what you said about, hey, there's no reason that this needs to be this much. We could produce this and we could produce it in a quality way, because obviously you guys aren't, skimping on the quality. You can make these quality products at an affordable price. And now, the proof is in the pudding of this, right? So that was your goal. That's what you attempted to do. Tell our readers a little bit about what kind of growth and revenue that's created in a very short period of time.
Yeah, so we started in 2010, and in 2011, I want to say we had very limited revenue. We had maybe 256,000. That was sort of our first year in there. The next year, we did 1.3 million. The next year, we did 3.1 million. The next year, we did 5.1, and then we did 7.5. We kind of plateaued there in about 2016, 2017. And some market conditions started to change. And you have to understand this is going on, worldwide in retail. But essentially, the internet came onto the scene, and you have e-commerce, and all of a sudden, you had globalization going on at the same time, and the internet put everybody like one click away from the buyer from the producer, and all the middlemen disappear, right? And so this was the disruption, sort of the initial disruption of retail. And what it was allowing was consumers to enjoy in the sort of the prize of globalization, which was we can make a shoe for $4 in Indonesia. We can sell it to you for $10. We don't have to sell it to you for $100 and have all this nonsense in the middle, right? And so that window opened up, and especially with a company like us, that was we would just sort of refuse to advertise. We were starting with no money, basically, even though Cuban put in, it wasn't a lot of money for the business that we had to do. So we had to sort of hack our way to success, right? And so those growth numbers are without spending a dollar on advertising. And this was kind of a golden period of entrepreneurship because we were taking advantage of this new technology. In about 2016, 2017, the world shifted on its axis, right? You had all of the middlemen were gone, but you all of a sudden you had Google developing a monopoly, you had Amazon developing a monopoly, and even some of the social channels developing a monopoly. And what's happened in the last 5 years is what we did there has disappeared. And so now the world has sort of reverted to a retail model again, where we've got to go charge $1,200, $1,600 for a paddleboard, and we've got to give $800 of that, $600 of that to one of the monopolies to sell online. And what a lot of companies like me now are doing is saying, okay, well, it's back to the retail model. We've got to go. If we're going to pay Google $600 to sell a paddleboard, we might as well sell in retail and give them a 50% margin. So this whole window that opened up has now closed, strangely. And so consumers are now once again locked out of the benefits of globalization. And what you're seeing now is you're seeing corporations are just becoming insanely profitable. And there's these huge monopolies that are sort of taking over things, which is it's a scary time to be in the online business, to be frank. And I don't think it's good for consumers. And I think something needs to be done about it.
Yeah, and so you've got this thing, the No Middleman project, right? That you've kind of spearheaded. And I mean, obviously what you're talking about is so noble when it comes to thinking of your customers and passing along the profits to them. And a lot of manufacturers don't even think about that as long as they're selling their products. So obviously you're coming from an incredibly empowering perspective when it comes to the consumer, and so much so that you started this effort. Tell us a little more about this, because this was incredibly intriguing to me.
So, I mean, the No Middleman is essentially just sort of a side business we did. We said, okay, well, this is crazy now. We're having to give all our money to, all the middlemen are gone, but now there's these new, very powerful middlemen. And I said, why can't the little brands like Tower just all throw in together? And if we throw in together, and essentially like Amazon or whatever has become a product search engine. It's just sort of the everything store, but they don't really do anything. It's just all of the products are there, so you can buy them. They make them fairly easy to buy, but there's no reason essentially an aggregation of brands should take 50% margin. It's me and one other person built the No Middleman project, which has maybe 400 of the top direct consumer brands in the world across about 3,000 or 4,000 product categories. Wow. We took 6 months or a year to create this just manually by hand, and it's just a curated showroom of these brands, and we don't take any part of it. You just go on there, you find the brand you want, and you go out to buy it from that store directly. We don't take any cut. We're not trying to take any cut. There's no cost in that business, right? Yeah. So that's why these monopolies are so profitable, because once you get that monopoly, basically you control everything, and it's pure profit. You're just printing profit. So it's kind of crazy. The sad part is with the No Middleman, the plan was to take Tower, which was generating income, and invest in No Middleman. And really about the last 5 years, since about 2018, it's just sort of been one hurdle after the next that we've been tumbling down. So we're losing money in that business. We're not able to fund No Middleman. So it just kind of is sitting there right now. I was just working on a sort of a different little slant idea of it, last night, late into the night. So I might try to revive it. But right now, I'm just trying to get the rest of the business just to be, profitable and, on its own, which is kind of striking, because I told you the growth trajectory we were on. And then we had this sort of fall off. We got away from Amazon. It's kind of been a crazy roller coaster ride.
So okay, there's no middleman project that you were working on. So this is not. Is this something that people can use now at all, or is it?
Yeah, it's an information source.
Okay,
There's no business behind it.
right.
And it's maintained to the degree that I can maintain it now. When I have spare time, I will get back to it because I believe, you know, you sort of let off this talking about capitalism. Like the idea
Yeah,
of capitalism is good because it motivates people to go after like unmet demand and sort of problems, fix problems. Well, there's a massive problem right now. We've somehow reverted back to traditional retail where somebody makes a shoe for $4 and they sell it for $100. And if they sell it for 150, people buy more of that. It's rampant consumerism, and we're not
yeah.
actually increasing the quality of life. It's just craziness, right?
So what's the answer from your point of view? How do we fix this again?
I think this is something like in retail, and there's other problems in the world, but you got to go to some kind of curated information sources um, that are sort of trusted, and you've got to fight monopolies. And I know, in the early, like the early robber baron days, right? There was
Mhm.
this new country and you got all these resources, and it spawned these monopolies, right? And they had to think sort of critically, how do you chop up these monopolies, or how do you create? Because once you have monopolies, it distorts the whole idea of capitalism. And
Totally. Yeah.
it just turns into a slave state, essentially, is what it is. And you really don't want that. Nobody wants that. Even
Right.
the rich people, because pretty soon the poor people just eat the rich. And you're seeing where the world's going, where it's like there's billionaires and there's homeless people, and everybody else, you're in one of those two camps. That's craziness, right? So now in the online world, I think people really don't know what to do about an online monopoly because, like I buy stuff from Amazon. It's super handy. It gets, I'll do my Christmas shopping there, one place, send it up to where I'm going. I do my searching on Google. So there are these monopolies, but we have to figure out how to deal with those and create an environment like the golden age, in the early 2000s, in the early 2010s, where there was innovation happening. And I think a lot of that's going to get stifled now. I think you're going to see really dark times in the next 2 or 3 years in the retail sector, because there's a lot of companies that were generating revenue, but they're not generating profits. And now with the boom and bust of the pandemic, you're seeing the investors go away. You're going to see a lot of blood in the water, and all of a sudden, you're not going to have consumers are not going to have choice. So it's a crazy time to be here.
So I know I'm pressing you on this because I'm incredibly intrigued by it, but you know, in a perfect world, if you could, wave a magic wand and fix this, what could do it? What would make this happen? You were talking about curated sites and whatnot that were trustworthy. Is it a matter of a lot of companies like yours, banding together? Is it alliances of some kind? I mean, what can fix this?
I think in the retail sector, because I've looked at this for 20 years, I think something like no middleman is the solution here. You've got to get somebody in there that is, willing to have a monopoly without exercising that monopoly, right? And it has to be some kind of an altruistic thing, or some kind of a social, benefit company, right? Like Google was almost this when they first came out. The whole thing was, do no evil. And now Google is just like, they're just how do we tweak our advertising and make a few, 100
Mhm.
more billion and hire some more people. And it's just like all they had to do was provide good information and let the best stuff float to the top. Nobody can resist that once the money comes in, and especially once you get investors behind it. They're like, maximize capital. This is why this sort of the notion of social capital, I think,
Yeah,
is a good thing. And I think we need to plant that seed back in people's minds. Because what I see, especially in my industry, there's this sort of Facebook discussion group, and it's a bunch of entrepreneurs, and they're talking about businesses they're going to come out with, but they're not even talking about the businesses anymore. They're talking about the numbers. Well, I need to have a direct to consumer company. It has to be a product that makes 75% margins, and I need to spend this much on this, and I need to keep my costs down to here. And so that's the model I'm looking for. They haven't talked
yeah.
about product. They haven't talked about anything. They haven't talked about solving any solution. It's like when I was looking at businesses, I mean, the three businesses that I've done really was poker chips, was kind of like, a lot of people think gambling is like the evil, but I think like a poker room in your garage and having friends over is like a good
Sure,
social
sure. It's a
thing.
game,
So
right?
that's
Yeah.
net positive. Paddleboarding is like a net positive, and then our new latest company was e-bikes, and that's like, changing transportation. You can make money in these things that actually add something to the world, or you can start, a payday loan company, or sell some, elixir online with 80% margins and rip people off. But people are just kind of thinking about money, and they're like, well, here's the metrics I need to have. Now let's just, whatever product fits that, let's sell it because there's money in that. Well, that's insanity. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
that's crazy. I mean, when I went to business school, you had like business ethics classes, and people sort of took this stuff like real. Like, if you're one of the intelligent people, like, you should be adding to the world. You shouldn't be like, just extracting, your pound of flesh and then, getting out of there. And who cares what happens to the rest of it? It's kind of a sickening world we've got into, in my mind, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, we agree with you 1,000% on that, and so that's why I'm really intrigued talking to you about this, because that perspective is so important, for all of our social capital CEOs. And one of the reasons I was asking you, what can we do to fix this is, we are trying to bring together as many of our CEOs as we can to not just talk about this, but to potentially interact in ways that could make major differences. And we have a couple of hundred CEOs that we've honored now who have very similar ideas to yours and perspectives as yours. And so, what we're trying to do, again, is not just talk to them, but bring them together in certain ways, and in order to affect change if we can. So we certainly want to bring attention, obviously, to your company and what you're trying to do. Where are you guys now as far as pricing goes, because of everything that's going on? Are you guys still in that zone where you guys are, an affordable alternative for paddle boards?
You kind of cut out there a little bit, Chris, but I think I got the gist of your thing. So what we've had to do is, certain of our products, we're having to treat ourselves more like a retail brand, like traditional just brand building. It's not, direct to consumer half price paddleboards here. So we have sort of a 3-tier pricing structure. We've got our sort of starter models that are down here, and you'll see 3 tiers in a lot of business models. It's a very effective way
Sure.
to basically give a price point to different groups that are differently price sensitive. So we have sort of our high end line, we've got our low end line, and then we've got our meat in the middle. Our meat in the middle was kind of the traditional company at a little bit of a lower price point, but we've had to increase those price points because now we have to advertise. We started getting beat by these companies that were spending millions and millions of dollars, advertising, and they're driving revenue. Maybe they're driving profit, maybe they're not driving profit. Our 3 biggest competitors in the paddleboard space all got acquired by private equity firms. So these were, once again, I'm in the surf industry, so these are, surfers and small business guys that are really sort of passionate about this sport or whatever. So they're starting these companies. They've all now sold out because they saw the writing on the wall. They just ran their revenue up, got out of the industry, and now we're sort of the one here left that isn't owned by some kind of investment bank.
Conglomerate, or yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
now we're trying to fight the good fight. So we've had this 3-tier pricing structure, and we're going to have to start spending on ads. I've hired an ad agency. We're launching the site, more of a modern site. I mean, a lot of the stuff, honestly, I got distracted a little bit because in 2017, 2018, I saw the writing on the wall here, and that's when we started to walk away from Amazon, because we said, that's not going to get better. That situation is only going to get worse. And that's when I started to do no middleman on the side. And I sort of had the rest of my company run everything. And I said, I need this to take off before this disappears. But unfortunately, this started to crater a lot faster than I thought. I had to put no middleman on the side burner. We started to diversify. We were like, okay, how do we make this company anti-fragile with what's going on? We opened an event venue. We now we office out of a beach club. It's called the Tower Beach Club here in San Diego. And so instead of paying rent, we collect rent. We rent it for $8,500 a month, and we rent it out for $5,000-6,000 a night, to weddings when we're not here. And it's this beautiful, like, waterfront. It fits our brand, and we introduce 150 people to the Tower Paddleboards brand every time they have an event here. And so it's offline, so it's not controlled by these monopolies or affected by globalization and these monopolies. So we're doing that to sort of subsidize the paddleboard business that I believe, if we can weather throughout this storm, and an idea like no middleman takes root to where the small companies can throw in together again, I think we can get back to that, where we can, I got to focus on survival right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. I love that creativity though, and you're figuring out ways where you can still function in an ethical way and try to deliver these boards at reasonable prices, but survive. So no middleman. I know I keep going back to that because I'm really intrigued by it, but is that something that could somebody go there right now and utilize that in any way?
Yeah. So it's the information source, but right now it's categories. It's like, hey, I want to get hiking boots or something. Okay, here's the 3 or 4 brands that offer hiking boots. Now you can go to their websites. It's not the final version of what I wanted to create. It was like we were aggregating these brands. We have these brands listed, so it's useful, and we get a decent amount of traffic.
And what is the website for that?
It's nomiddleman.com.
.com. Okay.
Yeah.
And what would it help if you had a lot of other CEOs involved in this with you fighting this fight? Is there any advantage to aligning with others?
Yeah, I think, definitely you get money behind it. I mean, the whole idea of you have this small company in San Diego trying to launch this thing, which is potentially $1 billion idea. You're trying to unseat Google and Amazon from original product search. I mean, it's a big company. Yeah. So it's kind of a farce to do this as this sort of small company. And I've went out. Mark Cuban's 30% owner. He really likes the idea. He doesn't necessarily want to put money into it. He sees towers. You put money in there. You grow it. Okay, kid. Take some of your profits, start anything else you want. I got 30% of that. So he's a cheerleader on it, but he's not putting more money behind it. Mm-hmm. We got a meeting with PayPal Ventures. So I went and pitched to them, and they like, well, yeah, this sounds kind of interesting, but then I don't have half of my time now to go around and pitching this business plan. So if you could get money behind it, I think there's a very obvious business model that not only does society good and benefits consumers, but you can actually make a very large company in this. And you can make these very large companies in a way where you don't have to take 50% of all commerce that goes through the US, like Amazon has done. They've said we've got a monopoly, and in Amazon something really weird happened. Like in the early days, we've been selling an Amazon pack since like 2008. But in the early days, they sort of welcomed us in. We were sort of a poster child selling on Amazon, and there were people within Amazon that really cared about these brands, and they saw the potential of leveraging Amazon to bring these brands, new brands to the world that were sort of disrupting a lot of stuff. And then really in about 2015, 2016, all of those people left Amazon, and the dark side of Amazon came in, which was more about profit. You'll notice like Jeff Bezos stepped away. It's because this is not a place you want to be in right now. It was really just the dark side taking over and say, how do we squeeze as much profit out of this, and and just screw brands, and who cares? And they started inviting Chinese companies in, and you'll see like the percentage of things bought on Amazon that are even coming from a US brand dove from like 85% to like 45% between 2016 and 2019. And it's just all, Chinese crap being sold on Amazon taking all of this profit, and neither of them, the Chinese or Amazon, is paying taxes, and consumers are left they're realizing we're getting crap when we buy stuff on Amazon. A lot of times, like if you search for a paddleboard on Amazon today, you'll see 50 basically non-brand, just sort of Chinese pop-up companies that sell until they can scam enough people. Wow. And then they go out of business, and another one pops up. So like the real brands aren't even there, and consumers will figure this out eventually. But it always takes them 5 years, right?
Tell people a little bit about your product, but by the way, what distinguishes your product from maybe some of those products that are made in China?
Yeah. So, I mean, our products are made in China. I mean, most of the world is made in China right now.
Right. Okay.
So at a certain industry, especially like we're in the bike industry and the surf industry, the paddleboard industry, those industries moved into China. I don't know what to say in maybe the 90s or something like that. Um, so it's made there. There's a real brand behind it. We do sort of high quality. What we're known for in the paddleboard industry is in 2011 we made the first. There were these inflatable paddleboards. There were inflatable surfboards forever, and they were the inflatable paddleboards in the market were just crappy. They were these 4-inch thick things that rode like a banana through the water. Nobody
Okay.
wanted them. They were less than 1% of the market. We came in as a direct to consumer brand and said a regular paddleboard is like a kayak. It's like, 12 feet long, 3 feet wide. We got to ship it by freight. They get damaged. It was a horrible direct to consumer business. So I said, I really want these inflatables to work. So what we did is we made a 6-inch thick inflatable and an 8-inch thick inflatable. And if you double the thickness of like a beam, it increases the rigidity by 800%. It's an
Oh, wow.
exponential
Okay.
effect. So basically, we fixed inflatable paddleboards, and they went from 1% of the market to over 90% today. So we
Oh,
basically
wow.
brought that into the world in the
Okay.
paddleboard market. There's no way to patent that, so all of these companies copied us. So we sort of brought direct to consumer to the paddleboard market, brought the prices down, and disrupted a lot of the brands that were out there, just taking advantage of consumers through the retail market. And then we changed it, with the inflatable paddleboards, and that really opened up the market because a lot of people, just more people, are willing to have this thing about the size of a sleeping bag that sits in your car. So those are really
Mhm.
the innovations that we brought into the industry. And now we're a company that has been selling these for 12 years. We stand behind it. Customers are happy. Our products last a long time. You're not going to have any problems. But you can buy, a single layer, like cheap knockoff product from a Chinese company that you can't get on the phone, and they'll sell you something through Amazon, and it's going to be cheaper than ours, and it's going to be quite a bit cheaper than ours. And consumers are sort of getting indoctrinated into buying this type of stuff, right? They look at sort of everything as disposable, right? Like if I can buy a paddleboard for $250 online, I'd rather do that than go to Even Tower and buy it for $350 because it's a paddleboard, whatever. I'll use it for a little while, and then I'll go put it in the dumpster or put it in a landfill. I mean, it's crazy that consumers think like that. But why would you, to save $100, would you get a product that's disposable, last you a year or two, instead of something that will last you 10 years? We're
Do
finding the same thing in the bike market too. Like in electric bikes, there's a wide swath. I mean, you can buy an electric bike for $15,000, or you can buy one for $600. And to get a quality bike with quality components, it's going to cost you, probably $2,000 to $2,500. We sell one for $2,000, very high end, everything. But there's bikes sold for $1,000. We started an e-bike repair shop here in San Diego, again diversifying into offline businesses, that service type businesses, because we thought those would help us survive. And people bring in these bikes they get off of Amazon to us, right? And it's
Mhm.
just crazy, the engineering on some of these. Like some of these bikes, you can't change the rear tire of the bike. Like if you get a flat, you've got to rewire it. There's not like connectors.
Oh,
It's like
wow.
they're hardwiring in a rear bicycle motor on a wheel, and there's nowhere for them for people to change the tire on a bicycle. And people are buying this, and companies are selling this, and nobody is like, arms are up in the air saying, "Why is this being allowed?"
Oh, that's crazy. So you're providing a product. It may be a little more, but it's still pretty affordable comparatively, but it's going to last a lot longer and it's going to be a lot higher quality.
Yeah, well, and it's still half the price of what you would pay in retail, or
Yeah.
30 or 40% cheaper than you're going to buy of the brands that are in retail, because they kind of have to go all in, right? And they have to, if they're making it for 200, they got to figure out a way to sell it for 1,200. They got to do the marketing to justify that, and then they'll spend $500 a board to sell it online. They'll get it in retail channels. We've sort of rejected that. We're still just direct to consumer. We're trying to do this advertising as efficiently as possible. And we've got a headwind because we're an existing brand. So we'll survive and we'll come out of this. We can be sort of a small company just with the 100,000 customers that we have, sort of repeat purchases. But we also have mentioned, we started this Tower electric bike company, right? So that one, nobody knows about Tower electric bikes in the e-bike world, right? That one is nearly impossible to get off the ground. So that's how the circumstances have changed for, just sort of the garden of startups out there. You've got to be a wildflower and just, spurt through now, where it used to be very fertile, and you're going to have like a lot of these startups, and all of those things will create a better marketplace. And now it's just much tougher. Like the e-bike, I don't know if that one, how we're going to do with that.
Well, there's so much that we could continue to talk about, and we're going to probably ask you to maybe write an article for us about some of this, because it's so incredibly important. But for now, how do people get to you guys if they want to buy a paddleboard, if they want to buy an e-bike? What do they do?
Yeah, you can go to towerpaddleboards.com and then towerelectricbikes.com. So either of those, and paddleboards were a pretty well-known brand. E-bikes were not so well-known, but both of the model of the business is the same. It's a very high-quality product with a real company behind it, sold at, good value. That's the basis of it.
Well, we are going to try to support you as much as we can, and let people know about you guys and what you're doing, and help you to fight that good fight, and hopefully you will persevere, because you sound like you're doing it for all the right reasons. So thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us, and hang in there.
Yeah. Hey, and I wanted to mention one other thing, Chris. I had actually thought you guys sort of put us on your list for a completely different reason. In 2015, we basically invented the 5-hour workday, and we did this test in our company for 2 years. And a lot of the media that we get comes to us about this 5-hour workday, and they want to hear about the 5-hour workday. And we ended up writing a book called The 5-Hour Workday on it. And it's still a live test. We now do it in the summers only when, after a year, we've increased revenue. So the last couple of years, we haven't had it. But, this is another one of those things where the world has changed. And you can actually, if you're efficient, you can condense your day and increase productivity and sort of attract a better staff. So that's another thing I just wanted to let your listeners know about.
Absolutely. And we got off talking about something that is so industry huge, and I wanted to really zero in on that. But the 5-hour workday concept and idea. I mean, you have how many employees?
Well, at the beginning of last year, we had 7. Now we've got 2. It's me and 1 employee, and we're basically trying to survive.
It's it's a little different when you have a smaller amount of employees, obviously. But the concepts of taking care of your employees, obviously, are so important. And I think that was probably a big part of that. I had read some things that you talked about, and wanting to give it as a reward, and so on and so forth. And those concepts are so important. There's a lot of things that you and I could probably talk about, because they're coming from the same place. You sound like a very ethical person who wants to, run your business in a very ethical way. And I love what you said about, business ethics. And it used to be something that was important. And so, we would love to have you do some writing for us, and maybe drive home all of these things a little bit more, in an article where we talk about in general how entrepreneurs can return to that kind of thinking.
Sounds great, Chris.
All right, well, great. Hey, thanks for taking your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for putting a spotlight on this type of thing. I think that's important.
Absolutely. And like I said, we'll be reaching out to you again, and really would like to, see more of your, read more of your thoughts. So look forward to hearing from us.
Awesome. Okay. Talk to you later,
All right.
Chris.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.